Hey everybody, welcome to Young Minds and Big Questions. Today on the podcast, we're talking about Richard Dawkins getting destroyed by Justin Brierley. Check it out. All right, welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Jared. I'm one of your hosts. Also joined by my co-host, the one and only Anthony.
I'm here, and this has been a good day today so far.
It's been a great day.
We've had a lot of fun.
Yes, we have, and we're looking forward to doing this podcast.
We are.
Before we get started, I just want to let you know, if you're new to the podcast or you've been listening to a long time, it's been really cool. We've been getting a lot of feedback from our listeners.
A lot of questions we've been getting from a lot of people, and we are planning on answering these questions.
We are. Keep them coming.
Most certainly.
If you have them. We're also excited. Want you to know, if you, however you listen to us or found us, you may not know, we have a website, youngmindsbigquestions.com. We also do a blog through there that has a couple posts. We're looking to do more. And if you're wondering what we look like, we have pictures on there that you can see what we actually look like.
Yeah. Jared looks nothing like he sounds, by the way.
Yeah, I'm way more handsome than I sound. You can also follow, both Anthony and I are both on Instagram, so you can look us up and follow us on there.
And you could ask us questions on there. You could give us critiques on there.
Absolutely.
You could yell at us on there.
Give us some pushback.
We'd love to hear some pushback.
Yeah. We also have a Young Minds Big Questions Facebook page. So if you enjoy the podcast and benefit from it, man, do us a favor, like that page.
You can leave a review on iTunes.
Leave a review on iTunes. That stuff actually helps to gain more listeners and to us to reach a bigger audience.
Yeah, totally.
Also, I'm excited. We have our second annual the Gathering Conference coming up, which is a young adult conference we do.
Yes.
Both Anthony and I will be there. Anthony is leading the worship, the music
and
there.
And Jared's speaking about sex.
I am doing a breakout session called Sexual Healing, talking about how the gospel defines sexuality and reaches into every part of our sexuality. So that will be interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be coffee
Will your talk be
conversations.
recorded? And can I put that talk on our podcast feed?
I don't know if it will be recorded, but maybe we could work that out. We'd have to see.
That would be great, right?
I'll also be doing that talk in San Antonio, Texas, the week before. I'm doing a breakout session at a young adult or a college retreat there.
And that is for InterVarsity?
That's for Chi Alpha, which is a ministry here in the U.S. for college students and all over the world. And so that will be interesting too, because that has college students that are both Christian and non-Christian.
Do you know where it is? Can people come and see you? And
no,
awesome
that's specific to that to that campus and to the people that are involved.
But they can come to the gathering.
They can come to the gathering. So if you're interested, if you're a young adult, 18, 30-ish, it'll be in Syracuse, New York. You can go to thegatheringny.com for all the details. You can check out the speakers, the breakout sessions. It's an awesome time. Hundreds of young adults from all over New York come together. So October 7th and 8th are the dates for that. And the deadline, I think, is coming up in about a month to pay. And it's super cheap to be a part of it. So thegatheringny.com, check it out.
Sweet.
Anyway, today let's jump into it. As usual, trying to challenge Christians and non-Christians to be thinkers and to engage some of the big questions about life and apologetics, philosophy, and theology. And so today we've got two really big thinkers.
I would say they're really big thinkers.
I think so.
Yes.
Richard Dawkins.
Who, anybody who's listening to this podcast probably knows who Richard Dawkins is, right?
Yeah, out of the four horsemen, you would probably say he's the biggest, right?
The God Delusion sold 2.5 million copies. He's such a good writer. He's a brilliant guy. And in this clip we're going to play, he's interviewed by one of our favorite radio hosts.
And also has a podcast that we both listen to.
We listen to it every week.
Every week.
Justin, if you're listening to this, we
love you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Justin Brierley, who does a podcast called Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Where he has some of the biggest names in both Christianity and atheism come together, and other, not even Christianity, other worldviews, and they do debates, and it's really phenomenal. If you've not heard of Unbelievable and you don't listen to it, I would
get the
highly
podcast.
recommend.
Go subscribe to it. It's amazing,
and especially for people that are trying to get understand apologetics and understand even different views within theology. I always recommend.
Right.
Unbelievable to them.
It's such a good starting place. Justin always breaks down. He has PhD level guests on, and he always is able to break it down in a way that lay people can understand, which is awesome.
Yeah. So check that out if you haven't.
Check it out.
So today we're jumping in. We're going to look at Richard Dawkins versus Justin Brierley, and this is a clip of Justin interviewing Richard
right after his second debate with John Lennox. And if you haven't seen their debates, I suggest you go and watch it because John Lennox is amazing.
Anthony has a man crush on John Lennox.
He's one of my favorite apologists. He's amazing. He has a beautiful accent.
Yeah.
So this was after the debate, and we thought Justin Brierley did a great job here. We thought Justin
we think he destroyed Richard Dawkins on this. So take a listen to this clip, and then we're going to share some of our thoughts.
You like morality, because I know that there wasn't as much time as I imagined there was going to be in the debate for that aspect. And many who are Christians and apologists, etc., would say, ultimately, if there is no morality, as it were, given by God, then there is no compulsion on anyone to stop them going around doing whatever they like, because there's no ultimate moral.
Do you realise what abject contempt you're holding your fellow humans in when you say that? You're actually implying that the only reason we don't go around raping and pillaging and stealing is that we're frightened of God. I mean, what kind of a contemptible reason for being good is that?
That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, everyone feels that there is some kind of objective moral facts around that raping and killing and stealing is wrong. Now, that is true regardless of whether evolution has given us those, if you like, criteria to live by. It's true regardless of whether we have evolved in the way we evolved. It's as true as 1 + 1 = 2.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not as true as 1 + 1 = 2. What we're saying, and I think we're probably agreeing, is that there are certain universal moral principles which everybody has, regardless of their religion and whether they have a religion at all. Things like, actually, there's even been research on this, giving people rather standard moral questions, moral dilemmas, hypothetical ones, and asking which they think is the more moral course. And there's a wide measure of agreement among all humans in different tribes and everything. I see no problem with deriving that from our evolutionary origins. We all have noses, we all have eyes, we all have knees, and these have all evolved. We all have sexual desires because they've evolved. Why shouldn't we have this sense of what's moral? Things like the golden rule, things like do as you would be done by.
But if we had evolved into a society where rape was considered fine, would that mean that rape is fine?
I don't want to answer that question. It's enough for me to say that we live in a society where it's not considered fine. We live in a society where selfishness, where failure to pay your debts, failure to reciprocate favours is regarded askance. That is the society in which we live. I'm very glad. That's a value judgment. I'm very glad that I live in such a society.
But when you make a value judgment, don't you immediately step yourself outside of this evolutionary process and say there is the reason this is good is because it's good, and you don't have any way to stand on that statement.
But my value judgment itself could come from my evolutionary past, and I suppose.
So therefore, it's just as random in a sense as any product of evolution.
Well, you could say that, but it doesn't. In any case, nothing about it makes it more probable that there is anything supernatural.
Okay, but ultimately, your belief that rape is wrong is as arbitrary as the fact that we've evolved 5 fingers rather than 6. I mean,
you could say that. Yeah.
Wow, you could say that. I mean, Richard has gone up against a lot of smart people, okay? And I don't know if I've ever seen him get pushed into a corner in the way that we just heard Justin do. And, I mean, that was just a brilliant performance. Yeah. Was it not?
Yeah. Kudos to Justin. That was great.
Well, I mean, what Richard Dawkins was saying was that your moral values are completely determined by your evolutionary past.
Listen, whether our ability to recognize objective morality is a result of God's special creation or it's a result of evolution doesn't matter. The point is, objective morality exists outside and independently of us. So even if evolution's true and our ability to recognize objective morality is a product of our evolution, objective morality still exists, and it exists independently. It's not a product of evolution.
Right. Like Dawkins ties our moral norms to our evolutionary past. And when you do that, it becomes seriously problematic. And that's what Justin really did a great job at pointing out. He asked Richard, if we evolved to believe that rape was fine, would that mean it is fine? And Richard was just like, I don't want to answer that question. So did Dawkins just concede that in that scenario, it wouldn't be wrong?
Right. It wouldn't be wrong. It's only wrong because we've evolved to think that. And here's my frustration is when you listen to a lot of these guys, and Richard Dawkins is incredibly smart. He is way smarter than us. But there's so many of these moments when we listen to these guys where the smartest dudes in the world are really dumb about certain things. And they are too smart to be willing to admit something, which is, hey, your worldview doesn't make sense in this area.
Right.
And you can either do two things. You can either deny objective morality, which is fine. Intellectually, that's honest with your worldview, but nobody actually lives that way. It's so against how you live that it kind of seems phony.
Right.
Or you can do kind of what Dawkins does, which is this weird dance where it's like, no, it's there, right? He makes a value judgment, but then when he's pushed on it intellectually, he's like, well, maybe it's a part of my evolution, but it still exists, but it's...
Right.
And I just think, why not go to the third conclusion, which is maybe your worldview doesn't intellectually make sense.
Out of what we see.
Right. Maybe you should reassess that and go, here's really powerful evidence that there is something beyond us, that morality exists. And we've evolved, yes, to be able to recognize it in the same way that we've evolved to understand
the
mathematics.
laws of logic or mathematics.
Or the laws of logic. Right. Which he says, it's not, it's not like 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it is. And to me, the worldview doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, even his response when he says, I don't feel comfortable answering that question. I mean, that just demonstrates a deep, real sense that, man, morality has to be bigger than what our evolutionary past has thrust upon our consciousness. If we had evolved in a different way, we'd have a completely different set of moral norms. So we have to ask ourselves, is there a better place to ground morality than in the whims of genetic mutation and natural selection?
Yeah.
So, Jared, how much do you think the value issue comes in when you're talking about the moral argument? On atheism, how does one determine the value of human life?
If someone chose to save the ant and kill the baby, under atheism, I have no right to judge that person because I may think that humans have more value for whatever reason I want to come up with, but in no way on my worldview and under naturalism, evolutionary naturalism, no way do they have any sort of objective value. So I can't judge a person who decided to kill the child in order to save the ant because maybe for them the ant has more value.
Before atheists pounce on that, Jared isn't saying that atheists can't be moral.
No, absolutely
because I know
not.
a lot of atheists are going to say, oh, well, you're just misconstruing atheism. Are you saying that I can't be moral? Of course, you could be moral. You could be more moral than most Christians. The point is, can you account for that moral standard that you're living by?
Right.
On atheism, is there any way that you could account for those moral standards?
My point was, again, not to say that atheists can't be moral, but to say that if you play out, and this is what Justin does so beautifully, if you play out your position logically to the end, what you come to is a place where not only do people not have human value, not only is there not any sort of objective morality, but you lose your ability to judge other people. Because if there is no objective morality, if there is no objective human value that is across the board,
it becomes relative.
It becomes relative.
It just becomes up to someone's personal opinion.
So I can't look at Adolf Hitler and say what he did was wrong. I can say I don't like it.
And that's what Russell said. Bertrand Russell said, I don't like this,
but I can't say it's wrong.
Objectively wrong. And a lot of these atheists do take their atheism out to its logical conclusions. Nietzsche didn't believe in objective moral standards. Sartre didn't believe in objective moral standards. Russell didn't believe in objective moral standards. But when you hear Richard Dawkins speak, it seems like he so desperately wants to affirm that they exist, but his worldview just doesn't allow for it. And that's why when Justin asked him, what if we evolved in a different way? And Dawkins was just like, I don't want to answer that question.
I don't want to answer it.
And when I heard that, I'm like, dude, Justin just got him. So you know.
And then he makes a moral judgment about the fact that
I'm glad that we evolved
it's
that
a
way.
good thing that we live in a society that
Right.
says rape is bad.
Yeah.
Well, why? You know?
Right, and then he appeals to his own evolutionary past as to why he thinks that. But see, this is the issue that I have with determinism. If all of our beliefs, all of our thoughts, all of our actions, all of our ideas have been predetermined through chemical reactions in our brains, through our evolutionary past, then we don't have any free will. Fine. Richard Dawkins says we don't have any free will. Sam Harris says we don't have any free will. Stephen Hawking says we don't have any free will. And if that's true, why make any moral pronouncements at all? Why are you denouncing religion and the evils of religion as if you have a moral high ground when everything that you think about morality, religion, worldview, why are you presenting me even with arguments as if I could change my mind? If everything's been predetermined, and this is the issue, how could I trust my own cognitive faculties on determinism? How could I trust the reliability of my own mind if all of my thoughts, all of my actions, everything that I think has been predetermined?
Yeah, and I can't judge myself or judge anybody else because they're just a product of evolution. So anybody who I think does a bad thing, number one, there is no bad things or good things.
They're just following what they're supposed to be following.
And they've been determined to do that. They have no control over it.
And I've also been determined to think what I think about it.
Right. There's no way of knowing whether that's true or not.
Right.
So I think
so you throw rationality out the window.
Rationality.
You throw rationality, you throw logic, and these atheists act as if I had a choice, right? They give me arguments and present them as if I could choose one worldview over another worldview. But maybe my evolutionary past has just determined me to be a Christian and I can't change my view. I mean, that might be the case. So then why are they giving me these arguments? Why are they giving me this? They were presenting with me these arguments as if I could choose. But that presupposes something, Jared, and that presupposes libertarianism.
Yeah. I think it's a good challenge, like what we're talking about now, is a good challenge to people who are considering atheism.
Right, and see, what are the implications of my belief?
If you believe that, and you're intellectually honest with yourself, because you can bury your head in the sand, and that, honestly, I think a lot do. But if you're honest with yourself, that's the conclusion. That's the place that it leads to.
Right.
And I think the majority of people would be highly uncomfortable with that. To say your children don't have any sort of inherent value or innate value in them. Your parents don't have any sort of innate value. There is no such thing as good or bad. There is no such thing as justice that is fair. It's just your evolutionary history and development that has determined who you are and what you're going to do. And you may think things feel wrong or feel right, but that's just a product of evolution. There's nothing objective beyond that. That's what it means. And so I feel like the majority of people, if they really understood that, atheism becomes a lot less appealing, and it should challenge us to question that worldview, because we should say, that just doesn't seem like it makes sense.
Right. I mean, atheism doesn't have any explanatory power. Atheism can't explain the wide array of human experience. It can't explain our intense moral intuitions. It can't give me a reason as to why I should trust my reason. On atheistic determinism, why should I trust the reliability of my own cognitive faculties to give me an accurate assessment of reality?
Yeah. It was interesting, too, in there. Kind of a closing note before we move on is he references mathematics as if it's objectively true outside of opinion or evolution. And that even begs the question, okay, where does that come from?
That's one thing that I want these new atheists to answer. How do you explain the universe's capacity for mathematical descriptions on atheism? I want an answer to that question. I've read so many atheists looking for an answer, and I have not seen one. And every time a Christian presses or a theist presses an atheist on this point, it always goes back to mystery. It always goes back to, well, I'm not sure why this is the case. This does seem like the universe might be designed, but it never is, oh, here's the explanation. Because this isn't a God of the gaps argument. We know that the universe has a capacity to be ascribed with these mathematical terms, okay? The question is, why is the universe explainable? why are we able to fill the gaps in our scientific knowledge in the first place?
Right. And why is mathematics very much seem like something we discovered
rather than create?
Not something we created.
Yes, that's the biggest question. And it's like, well, vacuous explanations from atheism, whereas theism explains these things in a way that makes sense rationally, logically, and explains the wide range of human experience.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to give one more shout out to Justin.
We love you, Justin.
We love you. I think you did a great job. We also should say we do love Richard Dawkins as well. I
love reading Richard Dawkins.
We enjoy him.
He's super smart.
We wish he would rethink some things, but we appreciate him. And actually, Anthony and I have this conversation all the time as Christians, and the whole point of our podcast is to get people to become critical thinking Christians and engage their mind. We appreciate the work of New Atheism and those guys like Dawkins and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens, because they've really challenged Christians to think through their belief and think through their worldview. And so ultimately, I think that creates and makes stronger and better Christians. So we appreciate them for that.
We're super thankful to the New Atheists. I mean, without them kind of bringing these issues to the forefront, I don't know, maybe you could tell, because you're a little bit older than me, Jared.
How dare you?
But, I mean, the God question was a little bit taboo. You know, you don't really talk about your faith positions. You don't really talk about religion. You know, it's kind of one of those things that people keep private about, but they really brought these issues out to the forefront, into the public sphere for open debate. And
yeah.
I think we as Christians could applaud that and say, "Hey, man, we're ready to go.
Yeah,
we could go toe to toe with you guys."
Absolutely.
And as Justin proved, maybe even defeat some of your ideas.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, the culture, kind of church culture that I grew up in. I mean, I'm 31 years old, so I'm not super old. I think I'm still pretty young.
All right, if you say so.
All right, but the culture I grew up at that time was incredibly kind of anti-intellectual environment, and there was such this fear around going away to college because these intellectual professors were going to... It was very much the false dichotomy that Christianity is mindless faith,
right,
and do not engage your mind, because if you engage your mind, you will lose your faith.
Yeah.
That's the culture that existed. I'm super excited to see that because of the rise of these new atheists and their work and stuff like that, it's challenged people to think through their faith. And now my personal faith, as I've studied apologetics, has become so strengthened,
right,
in a way that it wasn't before.
As you read the New Atheists, your belief in Christianity wasn't defeated, but rather it was strengthened.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading God's Not Dead.
God's Not Great.
God's Not Great. God's Not Dead. That's a movie.
Don't watch
which
that.
I have not seen.
It's okay. They do quote John Lennox as the only good thing about it, but anyway.
God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. I mean, I remember reading... He was really the first one of those guys that I read. And I honestly, to be honest with you, as a pastor at the time, I was afraid to read his book.
Really?
Because I was thinking to myself, what if I read this and he convinces me not to be a Christian? But
then you have to go back to doing what you did before you were a pastor.
Which is nothing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I had the thought to myself, but if one guy could write a book and convince me not to be a Christian, then is this stuff really true? Like, is my Christianity really legit? And so at the end of the day, it was like, do I want to be naive and ignorant and live in that world, or do I actually want to challenge my belief? And what I found is, as I read it, I was actually very unimpressed with his arguments, and I thought he just kind of attacked some stuff that wasn't really Christianity.
Right.
And I came out strengthened, and as I listened to these guys, I listened to debates, hear arguments and counter arguments. I think that's the key too. You can't just listen or read one side.
Yep.
You have to see them interact with each other, because somebody can sound so smart and that there's no answer or rebuttal to what they say.
You can't think of something like, oh man, how am I going to get out
from this? That's a defeater.
Yeah.
And then you hear someone else come in and go, well, blah, 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 and you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's not a strong argument at all.
Yeah.
And so
that's good to hear the to and fro. It's good to hear the back and forth.
Yeah, and make that a life journey of yours, I think. Like, right? That's what we're trying to do with this podcast and in our personal lives as well. So
beautiful.
Anyway, we love you, Richard, and we love you, Justin.
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been a good conversation. I hope if you're listening that it's been beneficial to you. And And our hope is to say
To debate Richard Dawkins.
To thank Richard Dawkins.
I said to debate him.
Oh, debate, yeah.
But that probably
yeah, Richard, if you're listening, you want to come on the podcast, or if anyone's listening that knows him, like, that'd be pretty cool. So, but man, we appreciate if you're listening and you're a believer or not a believer. Like, our hope is just to create listeners who are thinkers, who ask big questions, and are willing to
grapple with them,
in dialogue. And so that's our hope for today. So we'll see you again next time. This has been Young Minds and Big Questions. Check us out online, youngmindsbigquestions.com. Like us on Facebook. And if you've enjoyed today, be sure and share it with people. Get other people to listen, to like. That'd be super, super awesome. So see you guys next time.